So, question, is Yohan Blake overrated? Well, kinda, to a degree, but of course there's always some nuance. Now, first off, Yohan Blake is easily one of the greatest athletes of all time when talking about the 100 and the 200 meter dash. His career, his talent, right, everything that he accomplished on the track makes him one of the greatest of all time. He's a 2011 world champion in the 100 meter dash. I think he was only 21 years old at that point back then. He also has Olympic silver in both the 100 and the 200 from 2012 at the Olympic Games, both of those behind Usain Bolt. Personal best in the 100 of 9.69 seconds, which he actually ran into a headwind of 0.1 meters per second. And that's the second fastest performance of all time, equal with Tyson Gay. But if you were to actually convert things, Tyson Gay, he ran with a plus 2.0 win. So Yohan Blake on paper converted, he actually is the second fastest of all time in the 100 meter dash. But on top of that, he also is the number 2 all time in the 200 with his 19.26 from back in 2011, which because he didn't have a great start, because he was sleeping in the blocks, there's an argument that he could have potentially either gotten close to or even broken the world record of 19.19 by Bolt. But all those are his accolades that really prove that he is easily one of the most talented and one of the best athletes in the history of track and field when talking about the 100 and 200 meter dash. But on top of all those accolades, why is it that fans love Yohan Blake? He is one of the most beloved athletes in the sport, even despite his relatively short career. Well, remember 2011 when he won the 100 meter gold medal at the World Championships in Daegu, he was only 21 years old, and that made him the youngest 100 meter world champion in the history of the sport. And on top of that, he was a really strong rising talent. People remember back in, I think it was 2007 or 2006, someone could fact check me, but he was at the Penn Relays. He had a legendary 4x4 split at Penn Relays, competing for his high school, right? He was a rising talent, and to a degree, you can argue that he was the first quote-unquote next Usain Bolt. 2008 and 2009, Bolt had kind of come onto the scene. He broke the world records, 100, 200, 4x1, all those things, right? Then Yohan Blake, he kind of came onto the scene in about 2009-ish. He got banned for a stimulant, I think it was, at the end of 2009. But 2010, when he was 20 years old, that was his real rise. And again, it kind of mirrored this career of Bolt saying, hold on, he can actually be the next one up. In 2010, he had run 19.78 seconds at the Monaco Diamond League and 9.89 seconds at the London Diamond League. In my opinion, that was quote unquote the first next Usain Bolt, conversation. This could be the next up. And when he did actually make it in 2011 and then of course 2012, he took on this persona of the beast, right? After we saw Usain Bolt, the lightning bolt, Yohan Blake actually adopted his own persona of becoming the beast on the track, and that really resonated with a lot of fans. So on top of the accolades, on top of the fast times, what we saw from Yohan Blake as a rising young talent, again, quote unquote the next Usain Bolt, one of the first ever to maybe get coined with that term. I don't know if it was officially coined, but that really gave fans and spectators, everyone, a chance to be like, yo, we really love this guy and we love his personality, to complement what Bolt has as well. But what happened to him after 2012? Hamstring injury. He caught 2 hamstring injuries that really hindered the rest of his career. 2013, in about April or so, he got a hamstring injury, took him out for the entire year. Then in July of 2014, after running some early season meets, he was unfortunately got another hamstring injury that took him out for the rest of the year. And honestly, he was never the same since. He did get healthy, quote unquote, a little bit to be able to come back in 2016, but 2016, 4th place at the Olympic Games in Rio, 2017, 4th place at the London World Championships, 2019, 5th place at the Doha World Championships. So he was so close so many times at those subsequent championships once he was able to kind of get back, again, quote unquote, healthy. And the reason I say quote unquote healthy is because since 2012, when he ran his 9.69 at the Lausanne Diamond League, the only times he has ever run sub 9.90 seconds was once in 2022 at the Jamaican Championships, where he ran a 9.85 second performance. So outside of that single performance, he has never run sub 9.90 seconds since 2012, right? His last legendary season. So he is one of the greatest of all time when talking about his talent, his performances on the clock and all that. But because of those injuries, that really hindered his success moving forward. And to this day, we still unfortunately have not seen the Yohan Blake that we really do used to know. But that of course brings up the question, what would have happened if Yohan Blake didn't actually get injured? Personal best of 9.69 in the 100 100 meter dash and 19.26 in the 200 meter dash. In my opinion, I think the 200 meters is clear cut. If he would have continued on the trajectory, he never got injured, it's almost certain that he would have broken that world record in the 200 meters. There's an argument, like I said at the top, that he could have broken it in that race if he wasn't actually sleeping in the blocks. But it's almost certain he would have run 19.1 something, maybe even faster if he continued on for the years to come without actually picking up an injury. The 100 meters, it's a little bit trickier to, extrapolate out what he would have run a little bit farther into his career. I think with no true insight or data, maybe he would have run like close to that 9.63 that Usain Bolt ran at the London World Championships. Maybe he would have gotten to that at a few years down the line. Again, he ran 9.69 seconds into a negative 0.1 meter per second headwind. So we know that he had the talent. He was still extremely young at that point, only 22 years old in 2012. So he definitely was going to be going a lot faster. World record 9.58 is very, very tough, but who knows? He got injured, so we'll never know what the outcome would have been. But the question that we're here for, is Yohan Blake overrated? Well, one thing I want to make clear at the top is that talent does not equal success, right? Yohan Blake is easily one of the most talented athletes in history, by far, not even in just the sprints, but arguably in track and field as a whole, one of the most talented athletes. But his success in terms of his achievements on the track at global championships, it simply just does not match up to his talent that he's displayed when talking about those times and the performances that he's shown. And I do also want to differentiate. There's, some differences between the 100 and the 200 in terms of what he's done and when talking about, quote unquote, is he overrated? In the 100 meters, I think Yohan Blake is pretty successful. He's gotten the 100 meter world title at 21 years old in 2011. He also got the Olympic silver in 2012 behind Usain Bolt. He's number 2 all time when talking about that 9.69. He also has performances of 9.75 and a bunch of other 9.7s as well. So in the 100 meter dash, I think that Yohan Blake is actually very, very successful. Now, it's not multiple gold medals or anything like that, relative to some other athletes that we've seen through history, but I think 100 meters, he's pretty successful and would rank amongst some of the best all time. But 200 meters, this is where, in my opinion, I think the overrated conversation does come into play. In my opinion, I actually think when we talk about Yohan Blake as a full career in the 200, he is slightly overrated. And especially when comparing him to some other athletes who people don't like to acknowledge as being a little bit better. Now, look at his career. In the 200, Olympic silver in 2012. That is the only medal that Yohan Blake has in the 200 meter dash. No world championship medals, no gold medals at all, either at Worlds or Olympics, nothing. Only that Olympic silver medal in the 200. And let's be clear, Olympic silver in the 200 is very, very strong, right? It's something that we definitely need to, cheer for. His 19.44 to get that silver medal, that was a very, very, high quality performance, but that is the only medal that he has. Let's look at his times. I'm going to circle back to the medals in a second. Looking at his times, number 2 all time with that 19.26 from back in 2011, but after that, he has a 19.44 and a 19.54, but then there's a pretty big drop off to the remainder of his performances. His 4th best performance is 19.78. Now, yes, 19.78 is a very, very fast time, but when you start to dig a little bit deeper and start to compare him to other athletes, 19.78 isn't as great as you might think, especially as the 200 meters continues to progress and get a lot faster, year after year after year. And so it kind of does speak to the depth that Yohan Blake is lacking when talking about the 200, again, comparing to other athletes. Looking at his average top 10 in the 200 meter dash, again, it really isn't that great to compare to other guys. Huge shout outs to NSX for the data here. Definitely check out, all the data that he did, not only the 200, the 400, everything across the board. Shout out to you, NSX. But Kenny B, Letsile Teboho, Ariane Knighton, all of them have a higher top 10 average than Yohan Blake, who, again, number 2 all time in the 200, 19.26, right? He is not above these guys who are still extremely young and still have a lot more, time to be able to put down on the track. Even someone like Andre DeGrasse, Yohan Blake is just barely ahead of Andre DeGrasse by 0.05 of a second when talking about their top 10 average. So it's really tough to say that Yohan Blake, when talking about his performances outside of that 19.26, 19.44, 19.54, there's a massive drop off. That 19.78, these guys, Kenny, Letsile, right? These guys are running multiple times under that 4th best performance. You're talking about 5 or more times. So that depth is really lacking when talking about the 200 and his performances on the track, even though at the top of the top, he has that talent that he definitely cannot be overlooked for. But let's go back to those medals. The medals where I said he only has that Olympic silver medal, this for me is the biggest knock, as I want to put it in perspective relative to some other guys, who are above him when talking about their accolades. First off, we know guys like Usain Bolt, Michael Johnson, they're definitely ahead of Yohan Blake, where Usain Bolt, 3-time Olympic gold medalist, Michael Johnson, Olympic gold medalist, world record holder, all those things, right? Noah Lyles, 3-time world champion in the 200, 2-time, Olympic bronze medalist, American record 19.31. He's going to be ahead of Yohan Blake. Carl Lewis, 1984 Olympic gold medalist, 1988 Olympic silver medalist, former world champion. He has the accolades in the 200 as well. He was the second fastest all-time, 19.75 back in 1983. He has the accolades, definitely in my opinion, ahead of Yohan Blake, and I think most people can agree on that as well. But then when you start to go down the rung with some of the other athletes that you might start to nitpick at, I think it's pretty clear that these guys are probably ahead of Yohan Blake. Maybe some you can make arguments for, but I think that you're talking about guys like a Frankie Fredericks. By far, Frankie Fredericks, in my opinion, despite not having an Olympic gold, is definitely ahead of a Yohan Blake when talking about his World Championship gold medals, when talking about his double Olympic silver medals, when talking about, number 2 all-time back in 1996, his 19.68. Frankie Fredericks is going to be ahead of Yohan Blake. But then you have some other guys like a Sean Crawford, like an Andre DeGrasse. Sean Crawford has Olympic gold in 2004. He also has Olympic silver in 2008. Andre DeGrasse, Olympic gold in 2021. He also has Olympic silver in 2016. He also has the World Championship silver from 2019. So he has the accolades. There's some other guys. If we take Mike Marsh, for example, he ran 19.73 seconds in 1992, which was number 2 all time, just 100th of a second off the world record. But Mike Marsh also has an Olympic gold medal in the 200-meter dash as well from 1992. So if we're just kind of comparing apples to oranges, number 2 all time and Olympic gold medal versus number 2 all time and Olympic silver medal. Now, there's other things that do come into play, but if we're looking on paper, there's some argument that someone like a Mike Marsh is ahead of him. Someone like a Letsile Teboho, Olympic gold medal. He also has the World Championship bronze medal. Now, am I saying that Letsile is ahead of Yohan Blake? I don't know. Maybe that's for you to debate. Someone like Kenny B. Is he ahead of Yohan Blake? 2-time Olympic silver medalist, and he has the World Championship silver from 2022. I don't know. You could debate that as well. Someone like Pietro Manea. I would say Pietro Manea is definitely ahead of Yohan Blake when talking about his Olympic gold medal from, 1980, and then he has Olympic bronze medal from 1976, I think. And then he also has a World Championship bronze medal, I think, from 1983 as well. And he has the world record, which stood for, 17 years from 1979 all the way to 1996. So it's hard to be able to, argue when you're talking about the accolades on the track, when talking about those Olympic and World Championship medals. Even if you go farther back in the past, when you talk about guys like a Jesse Owens, like a Ralph Metcalf, like a Bobby Morrow, even a Tommy Smith, right? A lot of these guys have accolades, even back in times when they didn't have the World Championships, but they were setting world records. They were winning all these medals at the Olympic Games, or even just gold medals or whatever it may be. But I don't want to diminish any of his talent. Like I said at the top, talent is not the same as the success and the accolades. Yohan Blake is easily one of the most talented athletes in history, but when talking about the success on the track in the 200 meters and those accolades, they simply just don't equal up with the talent that he's been able to display. And it's always that what if scenario. What if he didn't get injured? Maybe he would have won gold. Maybe he would have gone on to break the world record. But unfortunately, that injury did come. Those injuries did come, and he wasn't able to get back to his former glory. The other thing that's kind of a what if scenario is this idea of, did he live in the shadow of Usain Bolt, right? If Usain Bolt wasn't there, then Yohan Blake would have been doing XYZ. Maybe to a degree. I think that this gets slightly overblown because Yohan Blake is one athlete, but look at the current era, the era that he was competing in, where that same sentiment applies to a Tyson Gay, to a Justin Gatlin, to an Asafa Powell, to, I don't know, a Nesta Carter, or whoever else was, really competing and running fast in that era, right? All those guys would have been winning multiple medals or higher medals if Usain Bolt wasn't there. So it doesn't only apply to Yohan Blake. And on top of that, if Usain Bolt wasn't competing, if he disappeared, I think some of the performances in those times that other guys were running, those wouldn't have come to fruition either at all or maybe some years down the line. In my opinion, I think in Berlin 2009, I don't think that Tyson Gay runs 9.71 if Usain Bolt isn't running 9.58. I also think, a month or two later in Shanghai in 2009, I don't think that Tyson Gay runs at 9.69. On top of that, coming off the 2012 Olympics, I'm not sure that Yohan Blake runs that 9.69. I do think that someone like Blake, I do think that Tyson Gay, they probably would have run it a little bit later, maybe a year or two later. Tyson Gay, I know he dealt with injuries back in 2008, even in 2009 as well. But I do think that the field was really competing up to the level of, Usain Bolt is here, Usain Bolt is running as fast as he can, and we can't catch him. We have to do whatever it takes to beat everyone else or try and be as close to Usain Bolt as possible. So if you eliminate Usain Bolt, it doesn't automatically just push everyone up. So I don't know. That's a little bit of caveat that I do want to, place there. So just my opinion, I've been running these polls every so often, or a couple months ago, these blind polls of like, whose career would you take with these accolades? And then later on, I'll reveal the athletes and it'll be completely flip-flopped. But Yohan Blake has been one of those guys that I think his talent outweighs his accomplishments on the track, like I said at the top. But Yohan Blake is one of my favorite athletes of all time. So this isn't to diminish him in any capacity, but I do think we need to put things in perspective when we're actually comparing athletes and their accolades over time. I know it's very hard to compare athletes from one era to the next. So of course, it's tough to compare a Yohan Blake to a Jesse Owens or a Ralph Metcalf or Tommy Smith. But when talking about the current era and the era that Yohan Blake competed in, or the era just before him when talking about the 90s and the early 2000s, I think that Yohan Blake is slightly overrated in the 200. 100, I think he's pretty solid where he's at, and he gets compared relatively fairly. But this is just my opinion, and again, this is not to disparage Yohan Blake in any way. Let me know what you think about Yohan Blake and his career. Do you think he's slightly overrated, or do you think he's rated, pretty fairly based on his career relative to other athletes throughout history? Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Always appreciate y'all. Thanks for watching.